We're going to build the best football team in the SEC Conference. We're going to build the best football program in the SEC Conference.
You have now arrived at Stadium in Gale.
The kick, it's been blocked again! How about it? It's been blocked again! It's going to heat one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone! It's a touchdown! And the Gators have won the game! Tyree Cleveland! How about it? I can't believe what I just saw! Dropping back to throw. Pops and fires the ball over the middle. It's Norris! It's Norris! Got a touchdown! Norris got a touchdown! Oh, man! Norris got a touchdown!
Ahmad Black, in his final game as a Gator, takes it all the way home and sends Urban out the winner.
You have now arrived at Stadium in Gale.
Boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Stadium Miguel. It's your favorite Uncle Corey. You heard?
It's Dan.
And under the lights, new lights, Delatorre.
Hey, man, bright lights. Bright lights.
Hiding in the shadows last week.
It's all good, man. Same corner, same time. We back at it. New time, actually, man. This is our regular time going forward. I think it's going to pay dividends for our listeners and also, you know, timing-wise with the season and whatnot going forward. But how was your weekend, fellas?
Solid weekend.
Go ahead, Nick.
Had my boy Chris Zen from the timeline over the house doing some painting for us. Did our nursery and our master bedroom. Good guy. Got great to catch up with him. Now we got pregnant wife moving, sleeping in different rooms, sleeping in my parents' house over here.
Just away from you.
Away from paint fumes. No, I have to follow
gotcha.
her.
No,
She's
no.
made that clear. I have to follow her. Had an ultrasound today. Baby's doing good.
Nice.
My wife's dreams of a 37-week pregnancy took a big hit today.
Yeah.
Looks like we're going full term.
The odds are not in our favor.
I didn't go full term, neither kid, man. So good luck, you know. We got induced with both. I think, like, here's the magical thing. Like, both of my kids were born in June, right? And on both times, the doctor, it was right before his vacation. So I feel like he induced it on purpose to get that check. You feel me? Because both of my kids are June vacation time for him. But hopefully the due date's not around your doctor's vacation. You'll be all right.
That's just a hilarious thing to think about. Hey, we're just gonna induce you. I gotta be in Greece.
Got somewhere to be.
I got a first class ticket to Greece this weekend.
Yeah.
So
Mykonos is calling, so
Yeah.
we're gonna have a baby today, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Nick, congratulations on the continued healthy growth of your child. Super excited to see that come to fruition and be an uncle from afar. Be a cool uncle,
Right.
unrelated, but be an uncle. I had a good weekend. It was golfing, went boating yesterday. It was egregiously hot though this weekend.
Man, it's different. It's generational heat out there, man.
I mean, I feel like I say this every year, but it is just unbearably hot. And we're getting weird times. Normally here in Tampa, it rains, you know, somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock. We've been getting rainstorms at 11, at 1, at 2. But otherwise, a great weekend. It was a more relaxing weekend to get back into my homeostasis for the rest of the summer.
Homeostasis.
He means after a bender in the Dominican. It was nice to just have.
It wasn't even a bender, man. I was just coming back. I didn't sleep super well there, and then coming back and just, you know, you gotta lose an entire day. You're just kind of ruins your feng shui, you know. So we're back to positive feng shui, good homeostasis. We're back.
I'm trying to get zoomed in here a little bit. I don't know why my focus is off of my lens, but no, I had a productive weekend. Did some filming down in Fort Lauderdale, actually, not Miami, but Chad Thomas, aka Major 9. He's an artist now, but tapped in with him, former Kang. It was also my birthday weekend. One of my friends, Nova, came in from the West Coast. My brother came into town, so we chilled out, made it, you know, work but play at the same time. So unwind a little bit. Had an Airbnb house with a nice pool on the intercoastal, so vibed out a little bit. hung out. Iguanas was deep. Them boys were shocked about the iguanas in South Florida, but iguanas is taking over, man.
You can kill those, right?
Yeah. Some people, there's like people like YouTubers that are like that hunt them down for pay. So they're a nuisance down here.
Yes.
So there are people that are like pests, like controlling them and exterminating them. And some of those dudes dive in lakes for them. It's entertaining content. But me personally, man, some of them things are like Godzilla walking across the porch, bro. I was like, yo, I'm good, man.
Yeah, that's one thing about South Florida, man. You grow up down there, you see, you know what it was like during Jurassic Park time, you know?
It's tropical, man.
Yeah, man.
It's an invasive species.
It is. Just like the pythons and the Everglades and everything else. If you're going to buy a pet, keep the pet. Don't release the pet back into the wild.
Fort Lauderdale, that is essentially where Miami plays their home football games.
No, it really is. Like you say that like jokingly, but it really is. That's right. Because the stadium was really right around. There's a Costco near there. Yeah, it's right around the corner from where we were staying at. Wasn't that far at all. I wouldn't say around the corner, but about a 15, 20-minute ride just west, not south, like going into Miami. So
Nick's hometown, right around the corner.
Love it.
Well, we've got an exciting show today. I'm drinking some Blade and Bow bourbon in honor of we are going to be talking about the Kentucky game. We're going to be talking about the Georgia game. That'll be probably a relatively short segment, and we got a lot of things to talk about. Let's get into the show a little bit. As always, this show is sponsored by our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Go visit them at homefieldapparel.com. You can use promo code Stadium and Gale at checkout. You will get 20 or 15%, off of your order. Best vintage cotton. They've got the Gator throwback baseball pullover. They've got the starter looking jacket thing for the summertime. They've got about 22 different shirts that you can get for the University of Florida, all retro logos. We love them. We wear them all the time. So go check them out. Homefieldapparel.com. Promo code Stadium and Gale. And be on the lookout for new drops. And if you're looking to buy for somebody not a University of Florida fan, they have over 100 different universities, as well as, I believe, the Indianapolis Colts. So for those of you that are rooting on Anthony Richardson and rooting on the Indianapolis Colts, you can get your stuff there. So again, homefieldapparel.com, promo code Stadium and Gale. Before we bring the Kentucky writer on to the show today, Graham Mertz was named to the Maxwell Award preseason watch list.
An exclusive list.
An exclusive list. So it's presented to the best player in college football. Graham Mertz was one of 80 quarterbacks across the country added to the watch list. Gentlemen, I have a question for you. At what point is it no longer a watch list?
Well, I mean, there's just a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
A lot of eyes. It's a lot to watch.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey man, I'm looking forward to seeing Graham Mertz's second season, man. And I'm glad the more watching list, the more he wasn't. I mean, the watch list he was on the like bus watch list last year. He was on the Nick Negative Nancy watch list last year. That's the only watch list we had him on. So like the more watch list, the merrier, man. We'll see how it all unfolds.
I think I remember last year around this time, the number one GIF or GIF, however you pronounce it, that you could get of Graham Mertz on Twitter was a picture of Graham Mertz like pointing to himself, and behind him they had inlaid text that said Graham Mertz is not good. So the times have changed a ton for the Mertz Hive, for the Mertz train. Murder Mertz started on this show, right? I think Corey, you were the conductor of the Murder Mertz train. Yep.
Hey man, I'm here to lie, and I'm gonna double down. That lie just came to be. At least I would say manslaughter Mertz. I don't think he murdered last year, but maybe year two we get some murders going on and we get a better record, go down the field a little bit more, stretch the field. But as Nick put on the timeline, it's line season and I'm full throttle right now, bro.
Yeah,
aggravated assault. But I think we got aggravated assault last year.
Aggravated assault.
I like aggravated assault. Yeah, that's fair.
Speaking of watch list, Rocco Underwood was named to the Patrick Minnelli Award watch list, which is given to the best long snapper in the country. I'm going to parlay this, boys, into the Gators landing a commitment from Mac Mulhern this weekend, a 2025 long snapper, a 5-star long snapper, and the number 2 long snapper in the country. Guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how exciting does that commitment make you?
37.
37, yeah. Well, that's a big one. I mean, it's important, right? You don't realize what a long snapper does until you have a bad one, right?
I know exactly what he does.
It's a long snapper, you. Ryan Run Far, Rocco Underwood. I forget who was right before Rocco, but he was sensational as well. Long snapper, you.
I would not accept that. I would not accept that title.
Plant the flag.
No, I would not accept that.
I'll accept it. I mean, there's
long snapper, you? Like what?
Probably 5. So there's 27. You probably have 28 U's that you can have.
Yeah.
Well, who's the greatest long snapper of all time? Give me your greatest long snapper. Exactly.
I mean, Corey, that's tough to think of on the spot. You know what I mean?
There's so many great candidates.
There's a lot of people that I'm going through in my mind. Maybe the chat can help me out a little bit. I mean, there's probably 30 to 40 names that immediately come to mind that make this challenging to think about.
Yeah, let me know next show, man. I'll give you a whole week to come up with a top 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So no, never mind. Similar name. I thought there was a relation to a famous long snapper. Todd Thomas is largely considered
legendary.
Born in 1959, unfortunately passed away in 2000.
Dan working at Google. That's all.
He was the first person to be drafted as a specialty snapper in 1981. He was selected 124th overall. So I'm going to give shout out to Todd. Always been a big fan of Todd.
Sounds like the GOAT.
Bold take. The long snapper award is named after the greatest long snapper ever. Could be. Oh, anyway. Enough long snapping conversations here. Gators hosted Grill in the Ville this weekend. Seemed like a good event overall. We'll get the full list. I know that we've got the Kentucky writer coming on here pretty soon. Quick shout out to Keith and Blake Alderman, who I know braved some very harsh conditions out there outside of the indoor practice facility, according to the University of Florida, not allowed for compliance reasons to allow them inside, which I think is one of those gray areas that you could probably, play in, but we know we're black and white.
I mean, Auburn and Florida State have their recruiting writers inside the building and then funnel the recruits to the recruiting writers because nobody has a bad visit on campus.
Right.
And everything is going to say is positive, and it's positive stuff about your school.
Yeah.
That's Florida, baby.
Yeah, that's Florida, baby. Well, anyway, we're going to bring on Nick Roush to join the program now. We're going to talk a little bit about the Gators and Kentucky game in our series where we discuss all of the Gators matchups. Nick, welcome to the show, my friend.
I'm happy to be here, and love what Nick had to say there about the funneling players to the visits. It's funny, like some schools, if you take a picture of them while they're on campus, it's
grab your phone and Gronk smash it.
Yeah, but if you had others, it's like, hey, why don't you come over here and talk to this guy while it's happening? It's funny how that works.
It's amazing what like positive PR and relationships can do to you when you don't treat them like the enemy. But that's neither.
Florida had a 5-star offensive lineman, and Nick, if I just mention offensive line recruiting, you'll probably see the chat go crazy. But a 5-star offensive lineman on campus and didn't want anyone to know about it.
Yeah.
Let the streets know that we have a good positive story coming to you.
That's that's somewhat relatable, even though Kentucky doesn't necessarily recruit the same caliber of player. I guess technically in the rankings right now they are, because Florida hasn't racked
Hey,
them up.
hey, Nick. Nick.
Nick's coming on like the UCF writer
listen.
last week, just ready to throw bows right off the bat.
Corey, I let Nick know that we had a guy on from UCF last week who came in saying that UCF's going 17-0. And it caught Corey off guard. His lies weren't ready. I think he was still in preseason
I'm ready.
form.
I'm ready this week. I'm definitely ready.
He's ready. He's ready for some. He's ready for some sparring this week.
And I can't take another Kentucky L, so I gotta lie because there's no way.
I gotta say, Corey, it has been one of those things that it still feels like an out of body experience every time Kentucky beats Florida. Like,
sure.
You
should be on this side, Nick.
Well, because I brought my dad. He came down with us for the last game down at the Swamp, which was the Anthony Richardson Will Levis game, and he spent his whole life having Spurrier just like rub our noses in it for just years and years and years, being a season ticket holder, and then to go down to the Swamp and watch Kentucky through that, like that's a rewarding, like I can't believe this is happening kind of moment. But now I don't want to say
this. Nick, don't do this.
It's not expected, but Kentucky's 4 road games are Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. Not an easy road slate, right?
No. Yeah.
But
That's
Tennessee, just nightmare stuff. It's kind of they still got our number. We're still living that Rocky Top sort of nightmare. So then you look at the other games and you're like, I mean, I'm not expecting second to last game of the year going down to Texas. Ole Miss, Kentucky's played them close as of late, but it's still, the lane train's rolling. So you look at it and you say, man, if they're going to steal one on the road, they kind of have to keep this going. But I know from the other side, you all have had the schedule conversation incessantly. And that I know that has to be we got to win this game just to let everybody feel good for a week before the cocktail party.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, Kentucky's done a great job of each of the last few years. Somebody has a breakout game. I mean, it's probably their career defining game has been against Florida. I know last year Florida couldn't stop a nosebleed on defense. Well, basically for the entire season, but definitely against that Kentucky team. And I think the year before it was the same. Cavassier Smoke. It's always somebody you've never heard of that all of a sudden is a household name after. They could play Florida every week and be a Heisman Trophy winner.
Well, kind of to your point there, Nick. I remember 2 years ago when Kentucky beat Florida at home for the first time, because I think the streak ended in Gainesville, and then the following year, or it was whenever they beat Florida at home for the first time, and like being in the press box, like everyone in the press box, Kentucky writers were kind of just like, "Whoa, the stands emptied." Like I think the Lexington cops were not trying to keep people off the field, but were helping them get down from the stands to celebrate.
Yeah.
But just like the vibe in the press box was kind of like we were all just like sitting there stunned. Like there was like very little typing going on, kind of just like watching the scene unfold. That was, of course, when Dan Mullen said we had more yards than they did.
Yeah.
Nasty work.
Shout out to Dan.
No shout out to Dan. How about that?
On behalf of all Kentucky fans watching, shout out to Dan. We thank you for all of your contributions to Kentucky football over the years. But that game in 21, that was, that was fresh off of Florida winning the SEC East. They were still a good football team. And then kind of from that point, the wheels started spinning there, which has kind of been a theme throughout Mark Stoops' tenure. You lose to the Wildcats, and then all of a sudden everybody thinks you should be fired. It happened to Coach O, happened to Pruitt. Like it's a theme. It could be a theme again this year, and I think particularly if the Florida defense doesn't figure it out. You all obviously are much more well in tune on that end, but from my perspective, because we don't know what either team is going to be this late in the season. That's I think the hardest part about projecting this game out, because Brock Vandagriff may be the truth, but it also may be it could be the other end of it where they're like pulling teeth to score points all year, because that's really been the theme of the Mark Stoops era. If you have any gripes, it's not beating Tennessee enough, and it's consistently having these moments where your defense is keeping you in the game and then you can't score 24 points to win, which that's not asking a lot in modern college football. And I know that they've got Kentucky's got their top receivers back. They got 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, but new play caller, new bell cow back from Ohio State, new quarterback. There is a lot of uncertainty there, and so like I don't know if it's going to be if we're coming into this game and we're saying, well, at least Florida's defense is bad and maybe they can finally get right here, or like that's where I think ultimately a lot of this matchup will be determined is just how good is the Kentucky offense, and I have faith that Brock Vandagriff's going to have a high floor because he's a good athlete. He can run, and hell, some of these guys, if you can just hit a 7-yard hitch, they can turn that into a 15, 25-yard game because they're good enough athletes. But that's where I think the biggest question mark going into the season is what's Kentucky's ceiling offensively, and we really just don't know.
The offensive line of Kentucky boasting 2 former Florida Gators, Jalen Farmer and Gerald Mincy, along with Marquez Cox.
Buddy, I forgot Gerald Mincy went to Kentucky. That's his third SEC. May she rest in peace to Kentucky, SEC East team.
Yeah, absolutely. So the offensive line is Mincy, Burton, Eli Cox, Marquez Cox, and Jalen Farmer. How's that unit looking?
It's funny you brought up Mincy too. I actually, before the game in 18 where they snapped the streak, Kentucky was recruiting a couple kids from Gibbons, Cardinal Gibbons. That's right. Yeah, in Lauderdale. And Mincy was an underclassman that Kentucky was kind of recruiting. So it's funny how things come full circle. Both of those kids transferred out. But really a lot of it is going to be predicated on how well he plays. They like Farmer, even though he played sparingly at Florida, because he is a big body guy and they want to play a very inside zone heavy, like just run it down your throat sort of style of football. And between him and Ohio State transfer Ben Chrisman, they're really pushing a couple of these guys who have played a lot, but it was under a different offensive line coach. I think a lot of the key, because Marcus Cox, I believe this is his 8th season. He played 7th. So he played 5 years in Northern Illinois. One of them was a redshirt year. One of them he had a long injury. Then you get the COVID year. So he's going into year 7. He's got a ton of experience. We know he's a pretty good ball player.
He's working on his PhD.
Exactly.
He's years old. I mean,
PhD in football. But Jagger Burton was this blue chip top 200 player that they really need to get to playing like a top 200 player at left guard. And I know you think like, oh, left guard, like it's just a left guard. But the sort of continuity they've been missing over the years, a lot of it is just the consistency inside, moving those big uglies off the line of scrimmage. And they brought in Eric Wolford from Bama, and he's a fire and brimstone, MF you up and down the field sort of kind of guy. No nonsense. Whereas the last guy was the opposite. So I think some guys do better with others, and I'm wondering if this guy can pull some out of him to bring some of that nasty back to the Kentucky offensive line, where I don't think it's ever going to be like that group that had, consensus All-Americans and future NFL draft picks. But they can be, I think, top half of the SEC if the things click. But Mincy, to go back to who we started with, like I don't know what happened at Tennessee, but there was some they weren't always seeing eye to eye there. So hopefully he sees eye to eye with the folks in Lexington.
In Kentucky, it's interesting, and we talked about this in Dallas. I think Mark Stoops has to recruit differently, and you kind of just mentioned it. Like Kentucky's not getting the same kind of guys out of high school, maybe that Florida, Alabama, Texas, Florida State, Clemson are getting. It's another year, another transfer portal quarterback. They're kind of like they just stay for 1 or 2 years, and you go into another one. What's the early thought consensus about Brock Vandagriff?
The thing about Brock too is I mentioned it earlier about him being kind of you don't know where the ceiling is. You don't know how good he can get there, but you do feel like the floor is pretty high because I mean, dude was a 5-star at Georgia, right? Like,
who's
that? Right, exactly. Like 5-star out of Georgia who played for his dad in a very successful program, Prince Avenue Christian. He seems like he's got the right head on his shoulders, and he has the athletic tools where Devin Leary, he could kind of extend the pocket, whatever, but you couldn't do the quarterback run game. And so much of their success in previous years was just like, all right, 3rd and 7. If it ain't there, just take off and go. And so I think you're going to be able to extend some drives they couldn't do last year with Vandegrift. But everything that they've basically said, whether it's on the record coaches, off the record coaches, people at Georgia, it's like, yeah, he really is doing everything the right way. Like he's a friend to everybody in the locker room. Like he's got some good leadership qualities, but like how's he going to process things when stuff starts popping off? And I think that's a fair question for all these guys who have had to sit and wait. And my pipe dream as a Kentucky fan is watching Carson Beck last year, where that Auburn game. I mean, Beck wasn't a future first-round draft pick for half the year. The Auburn games happens. He throws an early pick. They have a fumble in the first possession of the second. Like they're kind of in trouble until the very end. They overcome that. And then the next game against Kentucky, he's Joe freaking Montana, and he's just layering the ball in everywhere. He is unstoppable. So I think you're going to have to see some of that learning early on. Like there's going to be some hard lessons before things click. And that's why, like, if I was wanting to get Kentucky, I'd rather have him earlier in the year. Like South Carolina, they get Kentucky week 2. I think but they're also breaking a new quarterback as well. But I would rather face Kentucky early in the year to try to get Brock before he kind of pushes through that wall, if you will.
New offensive coordinator. Speaking of Gator connections, Bush Hamden, former coach at UF.
Wide receiver graduate assistant.
Yeah, wide receiver. Yep. I know anytime that there's a position opening, he's a name that the Gator faithful on the message boards throw around. Obviously, Kentucky over the last few years has had some great offenses, great offensive coordinators that have left and gone to the NFL, back from the NFL, and then back to Liam Cohen. Is that what his name was? And then there's been a few others. But what difference can you expect in a Bush Hamden offense compared to maybe what we've seen the last few years?
Mark Stoops likes the pro style because he can recruit quarterbacks to it, because it's like saying, hey, you're going to play this in the NFL, and also you can still run the damn ball. and that's where he wants to be. He wants to be somewhere around 50-50. But the issue was with Cohen and then Scangarella, who was 1 year between, was just the verbiage was too long. It took too long to get the play calls in there. And so even before they approved the helmet technology stuff, like towards the end of last year, Cohen was even saying, yeah, we got to make things faster. And the biggest thing with Bush Hamden coming in, he was a guy who learned pro style for 1 year in the NFL, but has spent most of his time in college, whereas the other guys spent most of their careers in the NFL, and then were just doing the college thing for a year or two to kind of bolster their resumes. But his offense is a base no huddle. There's a lot of check and look and see sort of stuff from the sidelines. So they'll be able to play faster, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference. You'll see a lot more of that kind of pistol stuff. But just from a personnel standpoint, he feels like the kind of coach that some Kentucky fans will hate the things he says, but the head coach will love him. Before the spring game, which wasn't a game, and it was a whole big stupid mess. But they basically had a spring game. They just didn't want to televise it or tackle people to the ground. And Hamden was like, just be boring golfers, right? Like, just be efficient. Don't make stupid decisions. So, like that, Kentucky needs to be more efficient. And if you can be methodical, then fine. Like, he strikes me as a very methodical in his approach. So that's the question I have, is where does some of the explosiveness come from? Will that happen on as regular basis as it did last year with Ray Davis? I don't know.
I mean, Mark seems to be, he said it at SEC Media Day that this is the best staff that he had. I know you've been around the program for a little bit. Just him leading up into a season, does this season feel a little bit differently with his confidence?
It does, but it's also just been a weird offseason because of the stuff at Texas A&M, because of the changes to NIL and everything that comes with that. So you've had this, like, I can't tell how much of it is him complaining about how just college football jobs have changed in general, or how much of it is complaining about his specific job in Kentucky. And it's hard to know the difference between the two with the A&M stuff out there. But like you have all of that going on, and then you have the 16-team divisionless SEC, which is tough enough as is.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule ain't easy, but then like this roster, it's all redshirt juniors and seniors. Like this roster is his most experienced. It could be his best defense he's had. There's maybe it isn't a college football player of the year in Josh Allen, but Deion Walker, they don't grow Deion Walkers on trees. Like that dude is a freak. He seems to always be at his best against Florida too, for whatever reason. Like he just is a monster. So they have like that's the part of all of this that like I think things are set up for them to maybe have one of their best teams, but how will they perform when you're going on the road against Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and Ole Miss? Like that's the part of this that makes it complicated to handicap just how good this team can be.
And if you are 6'6", 345 pounds, and you're not wearing the number 0 or a single digit number, you're doing it wrong. So shout out to Deion Walker for having that foresight to ask for the smallest number possible.
I like it.
When he dropped back to pass, like his like coming out a moment was that tackle for loss in the swamp 2 years ago, and then last year he drops back into coverage and splits a dude in half, and you're like, what? And also Graham Mertz, like maybe just don't. Like maybe throw the ball over the linebackers. I mean, like
it's a lot to ask for.
Mid-range Mertz, baby.
Oh, come on.
Hey.
Mertz. Here, he's on the max walk list right now.
It's a very we just opened the show with the very selective, hard ticket, hard club to get into Maxwell Award preseason watch list.
That's right.
Not many on it, but Graham Mertz is.
If with Eli Badges and also Trey Wilson, I don't think he got to go. Them guys could take a distance. I think we just need him to deliver it and not turn the ball over. We'll be all right. To be honest with you.
Here's a sliding doors moment to consider. What if Graham Mertz was Kentucky's quarterback this year and Florida had Brock Vandagriff?
I would feel way better about Kentucky than I would.
My lives would be better for sure.
Because I mean that was a sliding doors moment, right? Kentucky was kind of all in on Mertz, and we were starting our like, what's this going to look like? You know, because I'm sure it was a kind of a tough sell on Rosen going into last year. But I mean, it is the Wisconsin offense. I mean, they always suck. But we were fully prepared for that to happen, and then Devin Leary kind of presented himself as an option, and that they ended up saying, actually, Graham, you know, if you want to go to Florida, that's fine. We're going to go all in on Leary. So,
Leary, I think we won that battle there, to be honest with you. Bad decision.
You definitely won it in last year from just who was the better guy last year. Leary had the most touchdowns in the SEC, the worst completion percentage and the most interceptions. So, definitely won it last year. But if Vandagriff, that's the thing. It's like you're rolling the dice. Like if Vandagriff is awesome this year, then maybe the long play wasn't such a bad deal after all.
Yeah.
But I do think that
as well, then we got a problem, right? You know, how was Brock? Like, what do you think about Brock? Like spring game wise, did you guys like what you saw spring game from Brock?
We did, but it was like they didn't even do the fun spring game stuff. Where it was like,
it was one of those Muschamp spring games where it's like, hey, we're just gonna go out there because we have to have a 15th practice.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like I want to do the Bobby Petrino. Like I'm from Louisville, so I'm used to the Bobby Petrino spring practice games where it was like, let's just get guys wide open downfield and one-on-ones and just throw bombs all day. Like they didn't do that. So I think that's the biggest question. You know, he has a big arm, but are they going to connect? But underneath, like he had one. They've always said his best skill trait is his ability to ad lib, and that was his best play of spring game was. He called the wrong play. He heard it wrong in his headset. He rolled out and just made something happen, threw it downfield for like a 35-yard gain. So,
what I really kind of harped on last year, my take on Florida's loss, I thought Billy Napier tried to play Kentucky's style of football. And we talked about the way Mark Stoops recruits, and you have to do it a little bit differently. Nick Mingione does it the same way. Like Kentucky baseball plays a different brand than any other team in baseball in the SEC because of how they have to recruit. And I think it was a mistake for Florida to go up there and be like, hey, listen, we're going to line up and we're going to out-physical Kentucky. And we're going to take it to them. I would hope Billy Napier has learned that lesson. Florida has gotten a lot faster on the edges, both defensively, at the rush spot, as well as at receiver. How does Kentucky and the defense, if Florida says, hey, listen, trying to pro style out Kentucky did not work. Let's go back, spread things out, get our speed and space, and see if our athletes can beat their athletes. How does Kentucky's defense match up if Florida can do that?
That's how you beat Kentucky this year. Because like you can't run the ball against Deion Walker, De'Aaron Jackson, Pop Dumas Johnson. Like they're very stout up the middle. But the questions are on the outside. I know Max Harrison was a preseason first team All SEC, but they just quit throwing at his side of the field halfway through last year because they didn't have to. You could just go through the middle and to the other side. That's really arguably your biggest question mark is cornerback 2. Are they going to be good enough? And Kentucky went and got a transfer from Michigan, DJ Waller. He played in 10 games as a true freshman. He was competing for that starting position in spring practice, depending on who you talk to up there, whether he won it or the other 4-star guy they had up there won it. That Waller's a big part of the equation because he looks the part, like shaking that guy's hand, like he's got catcher's mitts for hands. He can tie his shoes standing up, got really long arms. Like he's a good looking athlete, but how well is he? How good is he? Right? Like I've seen some good looking guys coming off the bus, but how well can they play? That's the biggest question mark, and just the inconsistencies at safety. I mean, the pass defense last year was maybe the worst since they started this bowl run, where they had been top 5 in the SEC almost every year. You had to replace a couple starters at cornerback, and things just they really got away from them, particularly on third down. So that's the way you beat Kentucky this year is you do try to spread them around. You try to beat them on the edges and downfield, right? Like those safeties, they kind of fell for some eye candy and were susceptible to getting hit in big plays, even in obvious passing situations.
Yeah, I know Billy always listens every week. I am available that week. Actually, I should be back from paternity leave then.
Yeah.
I am available for that offensive coordinator paycheck to come and call plays. Been practicing on the EA college football. I'm ready.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you, Nick. I have one coming as well any day now. So I'm glad I haven't gotten a text during this here conversation that we've got to get going.
We're just telling me you got another 10, 15 minutes and you'll be anywhere.
Honey, hold on. It's not your first. It's not your first.
You'll be fine.
She's been through this before.
What am I going to do? I'm just here for emotional support anyway. Nick, I'm going to need your help. I know that we're replacing Ray Davis. Kentucky is Cavassier Smoke. I'm going to need some help on some pronunciations of these running backs. We have Diamante Terranium.
Chip Trainum. He just goes by Chip because he's got a chip on his shoulder. Or no, it was Blue Chip. They called him Blue Chip when he was in middle school, and that just got shortened to Chip.
I don't love it. If my name was Diamante, I think I'd go by that. And how do you say Trainium?
Trainum.
Okay.
Yep, just Chip Trainum. The next one's fun.
Yeah. Is it Demi? First name?
Yeah, first name's right.
Sumo Carnaga. I'm missing the last part.
Okay.
Carnbaghi? Sumo Carnbaghi?
The faster I say it, the better. Demi Sumo Carnbe. Like you kind of just don't even really acknowledge the G.
Where do you guys find these folks? You guys always seem to have.
And are you hoping to not write about running backs for the entire year?
No. I kind of want to because just run the damn ball. It works, man. If I could go back and if we could just live in the Lynn Bowden offense forever, dude, that works. Let's freaking do it. I don't care. Let's do it. So I would be fine with that. They are going to have to lean heavy on Chip, and then the thing is too is they really like the freshman from the I believe he's from the Panhandle, Sneads, Florida. Yeah, he's a Panhandle guy. Jason Patterson. He was committed to Cincinnati. He led the state in rushing as a junior in whatever class that was, maybe 5A. But they really like him because he's a big guy. He's big, 6'2", 225, and they really liked him in spring. But it is hard to tell these running backs when they're not getting tackled to the ground.
Okay.
What do you project season-wise? What's the win losses? What are you thinking Kentucky pulled up this year?
I pulled up the schedule, and it's Georgia early.
Yeah, week 3 Georgia's not kind. But a lot of it's going to hinge on that South Carolina game. So the not so fun stat for Kentucky football, they're 3-7 in their last 10 home games against Power 4 competition. They got to win at home. So I think they can be an 8-win team if they sweep South Carolina and Auburn and Louisville. I bet like they're going to beat Louisville. That's just what they do now. But the South Carolina and Auburn, those are two big ones. And ultimately, the reason why I'm probably going to predict a 7-5 season is because they like to win games, like one game they shouldn't, and they like to lose a game they shouldn't. I have a feeling they're going to win at Ole Miss as like a stunning, like, oh my gosh, and they'll be ranked in the top 15 nationally, and then things will, something stupid will happen, and they'll spiral a little bit down the stretch in this tough schedule and lose to Auburn in a tough toss-up game at home. Maybe
start spiraling week 6.
I'd like that. Right now, Vegas has you guys at 6.5, minus 125, 6.5, minus 105 under. Do you have them going over?
Yeah. I do like the over just from the talent level. Like, I do think it's good. And the other part of it too is like I know, like I've seen a bunch of bad receivers at Kentucky and who kind of punch above their weight. And these guys they have right now are really good if they can just hit their potential. Daikiel Shorts is a big hire. If that can hit, it works. Like they have a lot of talent that's like there. And if it just comes together, it's just as good to hang around with these other guys. But guys, part of the reason why nobody wants to predict Kentucky to go over or have this big season is because they fell for it in Will Levis' second year. They fell for it with Devin Leary. It's not, don't fool me 3 times, right? But this is probably their most well-built team of all of them. So that's why Kentucky's a fascinating team, I think, for folks to watch from afar like yourselves, where it's like, man, this damn Kentucky team, they're doing it. Stoops is doing it again, right? Like you can see a scenario where he's got them playing good. They're feisty. They're not going to be an easy out week to week. But last year, they had 3 games that are one possession here or there, where they're 2 or 3 stupid plays away. They didn't execute down the stretch. If they can execute down the stretch, that margin of error is really thin, and they lived in it in all the wrong ways a year ago.
So you're over 6.5. If Kentucky loses to Florida, can they still hit the over, or is that over 6.5, including a win in Gainesville?
Not happening, man. Just not happening. We get tackled this year.
Brother, it happened 2 years ago. I was there.
I'm just letting you know it's not happening this year. We got tacklers this year.
I'll probably end up picking Kentucky to beat Florida because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel so good.
It just warms my heart.
It's a gateway drug to football success. They say it's marijuana. No, going and winning in the swamp. It makes you believe you can do crazy things.
I'll tell you what, man. I grew up. Go ahead. No, get your thing off, Nick.
If Kentucky loses to Florida, can they still hit the over?
Yeah, because that Auburn game's after the fact, and they can still beat Louisville. And they still could, and that's why I think that, I was having a conversation with somebody at Media Days, and they're like, well, if they can't beat South Carolina, then who's to say they can beat so-and-so? And it's like, well, that's scoreboard math, and that's not how the sport works. You're 1 week away from being humbled. And I really do think that, aside from the Georgia game that, I'll probably talk myself into because that's just what I do as an optimistic Swords fan. But, outside of that game and maybe the road trip to Texas, Kentucky should be in every game they play in, which is a very dramatic twist in the Kentucky football I grew up in, where you just were writing L's on the schedle before the season started.
Man, at some point in October, it was basketball season. Was the Kentucky football?
We've moved on. We've moved on from that.
Yeah, we have the exact opposite on our show in the top right corner there. He talks himself into a loss every week. I
was nasty picking games last year. Check yourself. Including picking Kentucky to win, which I won't be doing this year.
They call him Negative Nick for a reason.
I was just right. Man.
I want to talk a little bit about basketball. Before we do that, you guys have any more football questions?
No questions, but I do overall, just preseason, we're far out here, but I do think we beat Kentucky this year. You guys are gonna have to run the ball again to beat us, similar to last year. I think we've shored up the defense side of the ball, especially at the linebacker position. That's the game Shamar got hurt, or no?
Shamar got hurt in Jacksonville during warmups on the Jaguars' pretend grass.
Okay, but I think our linebackers.
Sorry.
I think our linebacker position shored up, safety position. We also brought some guys in the porter at that spot. They should run the alley better, come down and tackle a little better as well. Defensive coordinator change. So I'm expecting a new defense. Offensive wise, I think we got playmakers. Running game is going to be stout. We just need to put 11 players on the field at all times, and we should be fine. I'm going to be honest with you. I think Trey Wilson is going to be a household name by the end of the season. I think Elijah Badges is going to fill in for Ricky Pearsall just fine. I think Ricky, all that Merck's got to do is just deliver the ball like he did last year and not turn it over. This team should be more mature. This is his second year in the offense. That's our advantage over a lot of teams on our schedule is that we got a returning quarterback. That should pay dividends for us. So we'll see how it all plays out. And if we lose again, I'm firing everybody because I ain't grew up losing to Kentucky, bro. I'm be honest with you. I can't lose to Kentucky again, so I'm firing everybody if we lose to y'all.
I think it really comes down
shame.
to I think it comes down to the question that I asked Nick. It's like Florida literally went to Lexington trying to beat Kentucky by playing Kentucky's brand of football. That Mark Stoops, who is now the longest
that Kentucky has a brand of football. I'll be honest with you.
Mark Stoops is the longest tenured coach in the SEC.
I'm not saying that Mark Stoops doesn't deserve his flower and his credit, but if you would have told me 15 years ago we'd be talking about Kentucky branded football, I'd have called you nuts.
Listen, they've got a brand of football. They recruit, they develop, and they play to it. Billy tried to beat them playing that brand of football. You have to have learned your lesson.
I have now.
Not you, Billy.
Yeah.
Billy had to have learned his lesson.
Got a lot,
and you've got to try
general.
something else with the added playmakers you've got and the speed and space. Send the hashtag speed and space.
Nick's got to run here in a second. We'll talk a little bit more about Kentucky and what this game means for Florida after he runs. Mark Pope, new coach. John Calipari leaves to go to Arkansas. Expectations for him?
There's excitement, which is not something you could say if John Calipari was still around. It was a much needed change of pace, breath of fresh air. And he really is zagging in every way that Calipari zagged, whereas like Cal's like, we're just going to out-athlete you with the best players, and we're not going to run any sort of style of anything. Mark Pope was like, we're going to get old guys who can play in my system and who can shoot a lot of threes and play in space. So ultimately, I think they do have a pretty good roster that's going to be a lot of fun, and it's kind of Todd Golden, Nate Oates style with this analytics. We're going to shoot a lot of threes and also a lot of layups. And by the way, we play in space. We should get a lot of layups too, just back cuts and stuff like that at the rim. A lot of it, though, is going to come down to just how good can they be defensively. And I don't know the answer to. Like Amari Williams, their big guy they got from Drexel, he was a 3-time conference defensive player of the year. But Mark Pope never had a top 50. I think he had one top 50 defense ever. He's been a coach previously. And that's really where, as much as you wanted to blame the offense down the stretch, when things started to sour for Cal, it was all defensive. Like they just got really bad defensively in the later years of the Calipari era. So that's my ultimate question mark going into the Pope era. That and then the recruiting aspect of it. It's going to be different. You're not recruiting like John Calipari. But you still need to hit on a couple of these big-time guys. There's a couple kids from Kentucky that are of that caliber in this upcoming class. So he does at least have that going his way as he starts off on the recruiting trail.
Awesome. Well, Nick, we appreciate your time today. Nick with On3, let everybody know where they can follow
Pleasure, fellas.
For all your Kentucky updates, and then we'll have you on as we get a little bit closer to the game.
For sure.
In October, I believe this year, or November. Yeah.
I'm at Roush KSR, like Roush Racing, ROUSH KSR, and KentuckySportsRadio.com. We got a ton of stuff out there, and if you're a member over there at Gators Online, you can check out all of our stuff. We don't talk too much trash about Florida over there. So y'all have a good one. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Hey, congratulations on the baby on the way as well. All right.
We cracked the code there. You got to go back to that old school style. Not old school, but like, spread them out. What are you doing trying to?
I don't think the offense was the problem last year. Well, it could have been better. We just couldn't tackle a soul, man.
Right.
And we got to shore that up. But I don't think the offense and the spreading it out was the problem last year.
Yeah, no, defense was atrocious last year. That was a frustrating game. It was 21-0 in the first quarter.
Yeah.
early
Yeah,
on.
just a complete
Very early on. Yeah. So as a obviously
unravel quick on this.
one of the things that I do like about Florida's chances, I don't like Brock
Vandegrift.
Yes.
Vandegrift.
Anyway, yeah. Vandegrift. Sorry. I'm getting my my letters mixed up here. Vandegrift. I do think you would probably want him early on in the season, kind of the same way you want Miami's quarterback early on in the season. But I do think replacing your entire roster every year is going to catch up to you at some point, right? I know that they've got, some decent players on the offensive line. They've got, an old roster. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to stay consistently good, with that roster. So Kentucky's a much better football program than they were in the past. I'm just not sure if I'm as high on them this year as maybe I have been in the past.
Running down on them Wildcats, man. They got to come to my venue. It's going to be loud. Brock Vandercheeks is not going to do what they think he's going to do. They're going to have to run the ball, man. And Shamar James is playing for big checks this year. It's NFL time. It's payday time. Everybody around him should be Pup Howard, feeling good about where he's at. Bro, I'm excited about the defense, man. And I don't want to be let down. So, I expect them boys to be better. Slackman is also, I'm excited about Slackman. The front seven altogether should be more stout.
Yeah, I mean, especially that front four. I'm really, really excited about the Florida's defensive line. Obviously, linebacker, there's a lot of promise, right? We've mentioned names. You just have to see them all put it together and be that consistent unit that you want. But you like to think that you have the guys, right? But I think this is the first time in a long time that I've been confident about all four positions that the Gators are going to have on the defensive line in a long time. I don't know when the last time I felt that way is. Right now, some of it's unproven, right? But some of it is just you saw the promise. You have some better talent. You get Justice Boone back. Not sure what his role is going to be this year, but you get some folks that I think bring excitement, and those are game-changing type of people, right? Interrupting the pocket, stuffing at the line, makes the job of the linebacker easier, makes the job of the defensive backs better or easier. So, man.
That was the most frustrating part for me last year was the lack of pass rush. That was probably the worst pass rush I ever seen from a Gator football team. Preseason, we thought the defensive end position was going to be better than what it was. Princely just didn't, he just didn't develop and turn into what we thought he would be as a pass rusher outside of the PFF stuff, but it just wasn't getting an effect in the passer enough. And we didn't think Justice Boone going down was going to be that much of an effect on the team, and it was detrimental, man. We needed him. Also, just LJ McCray. I don't think that's going to be a freshman that just vibes out. By game 6, he should be giving offensive tackles a fit. So we'll see what's up.
Yeah, I think last year I picked Kentucky because I thought Mark Stoops was a great game day coach, and we hadn't seen Billy be a great game day coach. I said, listen, I didn't think Dan Mullen cared about recruiting, but with whatever bag of groceries he brought back from Dollar General, he would make a nice dinner with those groceries.
Until Emory was on the pallet.
Yeah. Listen, sometimes the milk goes bad. And Billy, for how they've recruited in the transfer portal high school, I just haven't been inspired by his game day play calling. I'm banking. I'm going to pick Florida this year to beat Kentucky. I'm banking on him learning that lesson of last year. Hey, that game plan that we thought was going to be it, maybe that's what we want our program to be. Big, imposing, run the ball, dominate the lines of scrimmage. Maybe that's what we want to be, but we're not there yet. And this coaching staff has had 13 years to build that. Maybe let's try something different to beat this specific team.
Is that how long he's been there?
Mark Stoops.
Not by choice. Not by choice. He won't out of there. But
years.
He can't find an exit.
Man, it's unheard of these days unless you coach Utah. We've got Parker Toms ready to join the program, but before we do that, let's give a quick shout out to our friends over at Game Time Sidekicks. If you are looking for the best vacuum sealed cups that are going to keep your cold drinks cold, your hot drinks hot, go check them out. You can go visit them at GameTimeSidekicks.com. Use promo code Stadium and Gale. We get you Stadium 15. We get you 15% off of your order. just as good, if not better, than cups that you're paying far more for. People are fighting Target over them. Go check out Game Time Sidekicks. Stadium 15 will get you 15% off of your order. Go check them out. I use them all the time, and not just
every day
for me. So with that being said, from Dogs HQ reporting live from hopefully the safety of an inside of the house, not in the road. We've got Parker Palms joining us.
just getting back from vacation, drove all the way from Florida back to Athens. Any speeding ticket on the way home?
No speeding tickets.
Okay.
It was nice to get away to soak up the last little bit of summer, and feels fitting to be getting back from Florida to cover Georgia football, to talk Georgia football on a Florida podcast. So
where in Florida were you?
St. Augustine. Was playing a little bit of
golf.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Got married.
This is where I got married. I was just there at the first of this month, celebrating our 1 year. Beautiful St. Augustine.
And I think I introduced you as Parker. I meant to say Palmer if I didn't say it.
I've heard a lot worse.
Palmer.
Don't read the chat. You'll see worse.
Yeah. Dogs HQ. We're obviously talking about the Florida Georgia game. I know you guys call it something different on this show. It's the Florida Georgia game. It's alphabetical order. It makes sense, right? What can we expect out of Georgia this year? Obviously, return Carson Beck. Unbelievably talented roster, a lot of 5 stars, recruit really well, recruit the transfer portal well. Give us an idea of what we should expect out of Georgia this season.
Billable hours is what to expect.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of off-field headlines recently, and was nice to be on PTO this past Friday when the most recent one went down. I think this is a Georgia team that has as much offensive firepower as they've had in any year under Kirby Smart. Obviously, there's no Brock Bowers, and that's going to be very difficult to replace. But the key is bringing Carson Beck back and just having a second year in the offensive system under Mike Bobo. A second year for him at Georgia as well. Just that comfort, I think, is going to take this offense to a new level. We saw that with Stetson Bennett in his second season as the starter. The difference between that 2021 and 2022 season was pretty, huge. In the comfort level that came with that second off season. I'm very curious to see what that looks like for Carson. And I would say that Bowers obviously was such a huge weapon for Stetson and that 2022 team. But as a whole, I think Georgia's weapons are better in 2024 than they were in 2022. And I think that when you surround a veteran quarterback like Carson Beck with those weapons, it creates a really interesting offense to watch.
I said this would be quick. We really don't have to talk about it. Obviously, stacked roster. Trevor Etienne transferred, ran scared of Montreal Johnson to go to Georgia this offseason.
That's facts.
What's the expectation in the running back room? Obviously, there's a lot of talent. Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson. There's a lot of Chauncey Bowens, who was a Florida commit at one point. What does that room look like? How do you think that carries are going to be split up?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Trevor is going to be the unquestioned number one for Georgia, and I think that probably played a big part in his decision to leave Florida. Looking at his stats, from the past 2 seasons, you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt and understand, hey, he was sharing carries. Yeah. If you assume that he's going to 1.5 times what he did at Florida. He could be in for a really special season, was included as a watch list, person on the Maxwell Award today. And that says the kind of caliber of player that he is. Florida fans know that. Georgia fans are excited about that. I think that he gives Georgia something that the running back room probably hasn't had since DeAndre Swift was in town. A really, truly dynamic, versatile player that can do a little bit of both. You look at the rest of the room, Roderick Robinson is a bigger, more bruising back. Branson is in that same build, although he's coming off of a torn patella tendon, so a ruptured patella tendon. So he's working his way back from that injury that happened this time last year. Don't think that he will be 100% when the season gets going. I would not be surprised if we're not seeing him, at all before that Florida game, before that second bye week. So, I think that this Georgia running back room, what you've got with those two. Beyond that, you've got 3 true freshmen. Nate Frazier was the number 2 running back in the country coming out of high school, was at Mater Dei in California. I think he can do a little bit of what Etienne is going to do. And so to see maybe a two-headed monster approach there with a Roderick Robinson that adds that bruising mentality as well, certainly is going to be interesting. I think that, but to answer your question about where does Trevor fit into Georgia's offense, he's going to be a big part, and he's going to be a featured part of this running back room.
Hey, Palmer, real quick. I think Etienne, or we all know on this side of the world that Etienne, the lack of snaps and him being on 1A, 1B type situation was, in my opinion, was mainly because of his pass blocking, on the lack thereof. He was just straight up terrible in pass blocking. Do you think that could become an issue? I know you guys have an awesome offensive line, but do you think that could become an issue with him pass blocking?
Yeah, it's certainly something that Kirby and this coaching staff value. I think that when you have a bigger running back like Montrell Johnson is, like Roderick Robinson is, you might see those guys get more carries and more reps because of that. I don't know that Georgia's going to be asking Etienne to pass block a ton. I think that, in those situations, like you said, they've got a really good offensive line with 4 guys returning, that have starting experience. They feel very comfortable with up to 6 or 7 different guys on that group, and the tight ends as well. That they want to utilize those tight ends as pass catchers, but I think that they feel very comfortable utilizing them as blockers as well. I think that's going to be the case with Etienne as well. I think that we're going to see him be involved in the passing game, less as a blocker and more as a receiver. That is absolutely something that Georgia values, and it's going to be interesting to see how he can continue to develop in that, now in his 3rd year at the collegiate level.
How much?
Dan, you're muted. Oh, Dan was going crazy with the mic, but he's muted.
Yeah, no,
go ahead, Nick.
Yeah.
So how much is Florida going to win by? I think that's November 1st. And
I got about 10.
No, stop it. Stop it. Defensively.
The last time Corey and I watched a game together was, I guess the second to last time. The last time was the Marco Wilson shoot throw. But the last time we watched the game,
don't bring that up, man.
Florida Georgia game where Florida's down early, 14-0. Anyway, go on, Nick. I'm just reminiscing.
And I was super calm too. I said we had it. I kept telling Dan, we got this, man. Just vibe out. It's gonna happen, man. And trash start going crazy. Palmer, they're saying you're wearing khakis in the comments, man.
Palmer, you and I dress similarly. Somebody said something about your lavender shirt. I'm like, I got a lavender
khaki
shirt.
Shorts to be exact, man.
Yeah.
No, but there was plenty of khaki shorts this weekend.
I know the vibes. Yeah.
Defensively, what does Georgia return? I know it's a deeply personal game to defensive coordinator Will Muschamp. What does Georgia return defensively?
And Will's actually not in that role anymore. He's stepped into an off-field role this offseason.
Thank God.
Oh, because his son. You're right.
Right. Yeah, his son Whit being up at Vanderbilt now. He will be involved with the program, but is in an off-field role. So it's Glenn Schumann, certainly personal to Georgia's coaching staff, though, with as many UGA ties as they have. And we've seen how personal it is to Kirby.
But all of the coaches there, couldn't beat Florida when they were on the roster too, when they were players. I think it's just, I mentioned that last year. I'm like, it's just deeply personal to Georgia's staff, and it's like just another game to Florida's coaching staff. Yeah, no, and could be part of the problem, maybe. I don't know. No, I think with Georgia's let's start with the recruiting classes.
I mean, we got a lot of
just
problems.
have
Palmer,
single numbers next to them for the last decade versus Florida having 3 different head coaches in the same time.
Yeah. No, I think defensively, to answer your question there, Nick, there's so much. You come to expect a certain standard from a Kirby Smart defense and a Glenn Schumann defense. Those guys have been together for such a long time, obviously coming from the Nick Saban tree. They have set a standard and an expectation that regardless of how many guys are off to the NFL, you're going to see them continue to plug and play and, not a rebuild, reload type situation. They've got 3 DBs off to the NFL that were all taken in the first 3 rounds of the draft. They're going to have to replace those guys. And to me, that is, maybe one of the bigger things to watch in Georgia's fall camp is, kind of how do they go about replacing Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard, Tyke Smith, 3 guys that were huge parts of the defenses both this past year and in 2022. Bullard winning MVP of that national championship game against TCU, Kamari Lassiter being a starting corner both those years, and Tyke Smith being in that versatile star position. I think that when you look around Georgia's defense last year, you really felt the absence of Jalen Carter. And the fact that they had him as, him plus Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Trayvon Walker in 2021, in 2022, it was Jalen Carter, to have that kind of a force up front. Georgia didn't have that last year. And I think that that's where, the defense maybe struggled a little bit against the run. We saw Auburn try to expose that with Peyton Thorne there. Teams, Georgia Tech was able to do it with Haynes King at times. Teams were able to take advantage of running the ball against Georgia, especially with the quarterback. I think that they're going to, they didn't add anything by way of the transfer portal, anything big in terms of the portal on the defensive line. And that's something that I would, keep an eye on. They managed to hold on to Christian Miller, who flirted with the portal, flirted with, entering in the spring, and they managed to hold on to him. They did add Xavier McLeod from South Carolina, but he's a guy that, played in just a couple of games last season for the Gamecocks and was away from the program by the time October started. So I don't know how much of a factor he's going to end up being. But you've got the same guys back that were a big part of that group last year: Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, Mykel Williams. Now, the difference is Georgia is hoping that they're able to use Williams in more of a outside linebacker edge role than they are a true defensive lineman. Going to be interesting to see that they need guys to stay healthy up there up front. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins is somebody that had a impressive game against Florida, but wasn't able to stay healthy for the majority of the season. And so they need him to stay healthy so that they can play Mykel out there at that outside linebacker spot where he looked so comfortable against Florida State, had his best game of the season. You talk about inside linebacker, and that is the strength of this Georgia defense because they bring back so much. I know you guys were just talking to Nick, and he covers Kentucky with Jamon Dumas-Johnson transferring there, but that to me looked more like a situation of he was slowly but surely seeing his role change and was going to continue to see his role change in 2024 had he stayed because of the emergence of CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson, 2 of the top 10 linebackers in the class of 2023 that were true freshmen playing a big role. Smile Munden is back, and he's an incredible linebacker when healthy. Jalen Walker is a guy that, again, a guy that had a sack against Florida. Somebody that is versatile in his way, his abilities. They call him a hybrid linebacker. He's not inside, he's not outside, can do a little bit of both. Another year of him in that inside linebacker role, and continuing to utilize his skill set on the edge as well. That to me is the strength of the Georgia defense, but they do need help up front with the defensive line, and they are going to be looking for capable guys to come in and replace, 3 key pieces of the defense on the back end.
How do you feel about this? I mean, you guys open up with Clemson. Should be a good test out the gate. How does Georgia feel like walking into this season? I know Beck is coming back. They should feel very confident in that tight end position. You guys just got talent everywhere. I don't want to speak about it. Talent is just everywhere.
Actually got a difficult SEC slate this year with at Alabama
and Texas. And Ole Miss.
That's the game I was about to ask about. Texas as well on the schedule in the SEC. I think they're one of the top favorites as well to win this thing. How do you guys feel going into the season? Where you rank Georgia at in the mix of everything? How do you think they finish as well?
Yeah, I think Georgia is as talented as any team out there in the country, and there's no denying that. I think that with that schedule, it would not shock me at all if they did not go undefeated. Where is that loss? Because when you put them up individually against each of these teams, they are as talented, if not more talented than everybody. But I think the accumulation of the entirety of that season is going to take a toll. It'll be interesting to watch with Texas. How do they handle the wear and tear that comes with being in the league for, an extended part, playing an SEC team every single week. There's not an Iowa State on the schedule. Kentucky is a really good team. They'll probably come in right around the same spot in those conferences. And I think Kentucky, just for example, with playing against Texas, I think Kentucky is a team that would give Texas more of a challenge and a wear and tear and the eventual effect of that. I think you're going to see that with Texas. So interested to see where Georgia matches up with Texas. I think that Georgia will beat Alabama this year in the regular season. That being a tough game at Bryant-Denny, but I think that there's, maybe the Bama boogeyman is gone with Nick Saban now in retirement. If I'm circling a game as the loss for Georgia, it to me is that Texas game. Just having played Alabama already, having played Clemson in the opener, they don't have a bye, in the week right before that Texas game. To me, I think that's where going on the road into that environment, that's where Georgia could slip up. That being said, I would not shock me if the Bulldogs got the better part of the Longhorns in a rematch in the SEC championship game.
I think that's where, everyone outside of the SEC is always like, SEC bias. Yes, the week-to-week matchups are hard. It's the cumulative pounding of the schedule where, listen, there is Vanderbilt. Every once in a while you catch a Vanderbilt on your schedule.
Tennessee.
But it's the cumulative difficultness of every single week having to go in. There's no Rutgers and there's no Maryland.
No Syracuse.
Shout out to the Big Ten, which has 47 teams now.
Georgia's gonna be good, right? We know that.
It's a tough week in Jacksonville.
No, it's not a tough week. Tough week for you. I expect to win, man. I'm gonna be honest with you, man.
Get your lies ready, Corey.
I expect to win, bro. Like Brock Bowers is out of here. ETN can't block anybody on social media or in real life. I expect us to win this game, to be honest with you. Whoever your backup running backs, just tell them don't even fret about early season depth chart stuff. It's going to come a situation where hot blitz come and then Beck's going to catch a lot of heat and ETN is going to be holding his hands like this. And I expect him to start losing snaps. But it's a tough game. I think you guys have the better staff, better roster, all of that. We just got to turn the tide here eventually. Hopefully an NFL team come calling Kirby Smart, or we just start sending more Florida natives to work for Athens PD.
Yeah, I was going to say, Corey, between now and the game time, there's a lot of different times that these guys can turn the ignition on in their car.
Yeah,
brother, I saw somebody tweet about flying, and I was like, "Oh God, no,
no!" That's my airspace.
I did see that as well.
If I'm Kirby, I'm calling a team meeting. Listen, guys,
I'm calling the FAA, shutting that.
We're having
down.
enough trouble on the ground. We're not going into the air whatsoever. No helicopters, no planes, no hovercrafts.
Yeah,
we're not getting on scooters. We are walking. We are a team of walkers from here on out.
What do we
jogging club?
Uber. We got Uber NIL deals for all of you.
Is there any expectation of what we know about Ra Thomas, who was arrested on Friday?
Yeah, right now he's indefinitely suspended, is what we've been told from team sources.
Back before Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would say, that would surprise me, is what I would say. This is a second different, family issue
charges,
with charges. It would surprise me is all I will say there. And that's not, any sort of information. But I would be surprised if Ra Thomas is suiting up at Georgia this season.
Excellent.
It was a tough look for the scheduled happy birthday tweet to come out.
Very tough look.
Then they have to delete it, and then Brent McMurphy just comes with
from
a
the top rope
360 windmill dunk. Like, does Kirby not wish that Ra Thomas has a happy birthday? I'm like, Brent, my goodness. Don't expect Brent McMurphy to be breaking any Georgia news this upcoming season.
As somebody that schedules all of his happy
tweet,
birthday tweets, it's kind of funny,
Fire tweet though.
That one, I did see that one, and my first thought was, oh no, oh gosh.
When can we expect Kirby to fix the problem of a reckless abandon of the law in Athens?
Listen, Dan. We all sat here and celebrated the urban years.
Yeah, I was in school. I said all Jermaine Cunningham did was throw a Jimmy John sub. Not worthy of an arrest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nothing like losing, man.
Carlos
Carlos
Dunlap was just tired. He wasn't drinking and driving. He was just
my
tired
cousin
late at night.
now lives in Athens, works for the FDA. I'm worried about her driving to work, knowing that these folks are on the road just with an absolute reckless abandon. So, Palmer, what can we get from you? When is Kirby going to fix this culture of just absolute ignorance of driving rules in beautiful Athens, Georgia?
Who knows? It is a beautiful town. No, who
is.
knows? I mean, honestly, I will say, like, the fact that it continues to happen is concerning. I don't know. There's got to be further. There's got to be something done, because it can't continue to happen, is what I will say. And I think that, hearing from Kirby at media days, speaking with him, he was a lot more open about the way that the program is handling this internally, and that there are suspensions that are happening, and that it's not necessarily his job to come out and put those out publicly, but, because we pay attention, everybody ends up knowing it eventually. And he said that Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint was somebody that, was dealing with this kind of stuff last season, was suspended for the first game that he was very apparently not playing in. Everyone knew it was a suspension. It was not public before the time. It was very apparent why he was on the sidelines and not in the game. And so, I think that it really is an issue, and I think that it's something that they have shown that, they dismissed a player this offseason already. And again, like I said, with Ra, repeated situations, repeated occurrences of this is what gets you dismissed from the program. They can put up with stupidity and speeding and whatnot, and punish you accordingly and make you miss time. But if you continue to ignore the rules, that's when it'll burn you. And so, I would say that it really is a problem. There is no doubt about that. But I don't think it's going unnoticed and completely ignored, like a lot of fans like to think.
Yeah.
And Kirby said they are fining guys. So essentially, Georgia's roster is funding its own NIL. I can just putting the money back into the ecosystem.
That's what just going to say. You just create more opportunities for you to spend that NIL money, right?
That's
not
500
bad.
IQ.
Yeah. I mean, that's the next level thing. I mean, you can't blame Kirby for not playing chess, 3D chess, while the rest of us are playing, I don't know, I'd say checkers, but Othello. Palmer, we appreciate you coming on the show today, man. Really appreciate it. I know you drove back from Florida, so rest and relax. Let everybody know where they can follow you.
Publicly picking Florida this early in the summer before the season started. To make sure that we put that in a graphic and get that up on social media as soon as possible.
Exactly. No, Palmer Toms on Twitter, Dogs HQ. We like with Nick. If you're a part of the Gators Online family and the group over there, you can come check us out. I wouldn't say that there's as much love on the UGA message board for the Florida fans. As
feelings mutual, bro.
Kentucky one, but it is very much mutual.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you back in Jacksonville. We need to coordinate and start a movement to get a home and home.
Absolutely.
When the Jags blow up that stadium.
I have been to way too many places in the SEC, and when people ask like, "Oh, how many places have you been?" I've started to count, and I'm like, I've seen Georgia play Florida. But it's been impossible for me to get to Gainesville for a football game.
Yep.
And Mike
Same
White's
bye week.
basketball program has not made it worth traveling that far.
No, either way, Mike was here or there.
Aren't they going to do home and homes when Jacksonville goes through their renovation?
So this is here's the thinking on this. And Palmer, you can leave if you have to run.
Please.
But Tampa would love to host that game. The city of Tampa.
Yeah.
Orlando.
Can you imagine?
The city of Orlando would love to host that game.
Can you imagine going to Tampa for that game and then being forced back to the 904 to watch? I mean, you might have record low attendance the following year.
So the city of Jacksonville pays both teams more than $7 million. I think what both administrations would like to keep happening is a big fat check paid to them.
Absolutely.
And you're not going to get that big fat check if you are the Florida Gators and you're playing that game in Athens. So Tampa would love to host it. Orlando would. That sounds like a bidding war. Atlanta seems like a very easy Georgia stop.
I can tell you this: Georgia fans don't want to go to Atlanta again. They play in Atlanta enough between a neutral site opener that feels like it happens every other year. Georgia Tech every other year, like that.
The SEC championship every year.
Championship, Peach Bowls. Georgia fans have seen enough football games at Mercedes-Benz Stadium that they are perfectly fine not going there for a game against Florida.
The universities who are going to be helping to pay a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit out for name, image, and likeness, and 2 have to start paying players would like those checks. So I think what we're up against here, against the home and home, which I think most of the fan base would love, is Tampa, Orlando will get into a bidding war, and then whoever wants to pay more will go there. They'll see how many people. They'll see how many people come into their town for that game because it's a gigantic deal. And Atlanta will also see that. And then all of a sudden you go back to Jacksonville and you're like, shoot, yesterday's price is not today's price. And here's what we're going to do. Which is, I think, the biggest
price up for Jacksonville.
Which is why people in Jacksonville,
and they can't afford it.
Which is why the people I talk to in Jacksonville are like, no, it's definitely going to be home and home. And I'm like, that's what the Jags and the city administrators in Jacksonville want you to put out there. But I don't think it's clear cut home and home. I would love a home and home.
I would love a home and home. And it's 26, 27 that we're talking about.
Yeah, I
believe so. Yes.
Yeah. I would love to be in Gainesville one of those years.
Last time Florida was in Athens. Gladwell had the wheel at that point, bro. You don't want to be here.
Last time Florida was in Athens, they hung 100 or hung a half 100 between the hedges. The old ball coach, the head ball coach would say.
That's right. All right, Palmer, we appreciate you coming on the show. Hopefully we can get you on the last week of October and talk a little bit about this game. Appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds like a plan. See you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Good one.
I'm glad I got that out there. I've been saying that like privately to people, but we need we need to be bullies. We need to be bullies. Georgia fans, Florida fans, you need to unite, because I selfishly want a Florida, Georgia home and home during those 2 years. And I just think money talks. And
I wouldn't mind a neutral site, man. I don't want those humpers in my city.
Come on.
So I wouldn't mind, like, Tampa sounds like a vibe, bro. I like it out in Tampa. Orlando, Camping Road, just not it. I don't want to be in that dump. It's a dump.
I agree. Yeah, I just don't need to see the spiked shoulder pads in the swamp. You know what I mean?
Come on.
Feel weird.
Yeah.
No, it
may be violence.
You guys are the ops. I don't know. You guys are the actual ops.
No, you're the ops.
You're the ops.
I'm the seeker
I feel like Corey and I are
of
on the
truth and
same page
justice.
here. No, I don't want to see that game. I mean, I want to see the game in Gainesville, and then I want to see the game in Tampa. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, Georgia fans don't want to go to Mercedes-Benz, right?
I don't want to go to Athens, to be real.
I don't want to go to Athens. It's tough to get there, right? So I'm already trying to figure out my way to Augusta next week. Not a big deal. Or next year, not a big deal. But going to Athens would be nuts. I've got a cousin there, so I could probably stay there. But, why not go to Tampa? why not go to Gainesville?
If you
And
need
just safer
someone to use one of
driving,
those extra tickets,
for one,
Dan,
you know?
I can be
That's
available.
good. Good point. Corey, make a
I
good
can be
point. I don't need Georgia driving anywhere.
Right.
You know, for the safety of the good citizens of the road.
But Corey's not even putting his vote in for Tampa. He wants to go to Camping World Stadium.
No,
I
he
said
doesn't. No, he
Tampa.
said he wants to go to
No.
Tampa.
Oh, okay.
Camping
I thought
World
you said
You
Orlando.
kept bringing up Orlando. Nobody else on the show is.
No, I'm cool with
It's, a
Orlando,
bid,
man.
it's going to be a bidding war, and who wants to pay more to have the game? Tampa.
I might chip in to Tampa. Be real with you. I might just get them NIL.
Send a check. Send a check.
Bro,
Also,
that Bay is bad, bro.
What is Georgia doing? Perfect NIL opportunity. Just a massive $1 million NIL deal with Uber. Just
Yeah. Definitely an opportunity there. I just don't. I mean, Uber's there and they got plenty of money and not using it.
true.
So
That's
just because
true.
they got the NIL don't mean they'll use it. I mean, we're like no joke. All jokes aside, like eventually that culture catches up to you, right? Like Kirby could be the greatest coach of all time. Urban, right? Eventually it catches up to you, and we'll see how it all plays out. But if they don't clean up the culture of the arrest and the shenanigans that's going on off the field, the pressure is going to build just like it did for Urban. We just needed to build up a little faster, safely, without any deaths.
Yeah, no, we don't wish harm on anybody for sure.
Right.
Any thoughts on the Georgia game? Obviously, a really tough game for the Gators this season. Carson Beck, obviously, right now, maybe the Heisman favorite, potential number 1 overall. I'm glad my team won't be picking number 1 overall for quarterback. But any thoughts on this game?
No.
Yeah.
We just need. They don't feel as dominant as they used to feel. Like overall in Georgia, that defensive line don't scare me like it has in the past. Brock Bowers, they don't have a Avenger going out for passes anymore. So it just feels a little differently. Right. They got some players. Don't get me wrong. They got some guys and some studs over there, but I don't see the bona fide superstar like they've had in the past. That's my overall take on Georgia right now.
Yeah. And who knows? Schedule's a little tougher, right? You get beat down a little bit more. They've got Clemson instead of Kennesaw State, right? So
at Alabama before
at
Florida.
Alabama. They're still not going to Texas A&M, but
they play Texas or they get Texas bye week Florida.
I like that.
But yeah, Florida gets that bye week, but also, that's going to be gross. That's that 3:30 ABC Sports. I'm going to miss the CBS jingle.
Yeah, it's going to be weird when Nebraska and Iowa run out to the CBS jingle, but it is what it is. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Couple RPM picks for the Gators roll in this week. Probably the name that people are most noticing is Demetrius Samuel. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. From Palm Bay, Florida. Corey, your neck of the woods, Heritage High School.
Palm Beach.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm thinking Palm Bay's up north, isn't it? Anyway, sorry. 2026 guy expected to reclassify to the 2025 class. He's a 4-star, currently committed to Syracuse. He's the number 52 overall prospect in the class of 2026, top 10 prospect in the state of Florida. Was in the Grill in the Ville cookout event this weekend. Sources are saying it's just a matter of time for him to potentially flip to Florida.
I hate reclasses. I do. I just hate reclassifications with a passion.
Yeah.
Very rarely do they pan out. I don't know what his age is and how it's working out, but I hate reclassification.
Yeah. I mean, who's the last one we had? Kamar Wilcoxon?
Enoch Wangoy this class.
Yeah.
Who's on campus right now. But yeah, Kamar Wilcoxon, like that was – I think he did himself a disservice. And I think a lot of these kids, like they're being told to reclassify, go up to fill needs that coaches want to fill in a certain class or to move numbers around and make numbers make sense. And I think for most kids, it's probably a disservice to them.
For sure.
I mean, especially, now we're going to start to see some of these guys graduate, but the Kentucky writer Nick was like, hey, this guy's a 7th year player, right? Like
unless you have, Unless the FCAT had you in a stranglehold and you were held back a couple times in elementary school, and you're just
Calvin Ridley was like 19, almost 20 as a freshman.
Like I said, that FCAT, so no joke. So.
Yeah, FCAT was a crisis.
A crisis.
It was, man.
The FCAT crisis.
The FCAT crisis,
bro. The Gators also hosted, I believe his last name is pronounced this way, Michael Fasusi. He's the number 12 overall player, number 3 offensive tackle, number 5 player in Texas. Said his visit to Florida went really well. Was here for Grill in the Ville, offered by Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. Has visited those schools as well. Has visited Florida last year. Came to this event. Joe Hamilton was the guy that got him to visit this past week. Joe Hamilton, as we mentioned, came back to Florida from Texas A&M. I don't expect Florida to land his commitment. I think he's announcing his commitment here on August the 21st. At some point, you got to win these guys. You know what I mean? 6'5", 299, number 3 tackle. Florida's offensive line recruiting. They got a lot of depth. They've got some okay players, right? Some decent players, a lot of 4-stars. But at some point, you gotta start competing for these guys, and it looks like Florida's going to come up empty there, and Florida seems to be really struggling at that offensive line position, recruiting wise.
Yeah. It's just going to be a struggle with us recruiting until we start winning some games. There's a lot of prospects just saying that they're waiting on Florida to win. We start winning, it'll be an avalanche of guys I think we flip, but just got to win football games. The fans are waiting, the recruits are waiting, the whole state of Florida definitely is. If you're a Gator fan, waiting to see the results, man. We've been selling the rebuild, and you got a lot of good prospects on the rebuild, but now it's time to show the fruits of that labor, man. So they got to win games.
On that note, and we already previewed 2 different games on the schedule. How important is that Miami game in your mind, in the fan base's mind? I think I've been calling it the Hope Bowl. Like, both coaches, Mario Billy, hired the same year, same offseason. Both are under 500. Both are selling hope that the program is headed in the right direction, has the right trajectory, and good luck going door to door selling that hope the rest of the year if you lose. And I think it's even more magnified for Billy because the game is at home. You have a built-in excuse, first game, transfer portal quarterback, bunch of transfer portal guys playing in their first game. Tough to play on the road in the swamp. So I think you don't have that excuse if you're Billy Napier. But to me, it is a critical game for Florida, not only because that front end of the schedule, first 5 games are probably the easier 5 of any stretch, but also because of the rivalry. And to me, like it's a tough sledding after that if you lose to Miami.
That's a must-win game.
Yeah,
just to have positive momentum for the rest of the schedule. You just got to win that game. If you don't, the negativity in our fan base is gonna like boil up early. The Boo Birds, the media is gonna be what it's gonna be. Gator media, so that's a must-win, man. Could he probably bounce back the rest of the season? Yeah, that's a possibility, but man, it's gonna be tough from just a support standpoint, and noise in the system is what they call it, right?
Yeah, noise in the system. Finding the signal through the noise is going to be tough for Billy Napier. Couple other RPM picks as we talk a little bit about recruiting here. Ben Hanks, Nick threw in his illustrious RPM pick.
I'm 90%, baby. I'm 90%, baby.
90%.
You've done like 5 all time.
Confidence.
Oh no, I've done 10, and I'm 9 of 10.
Who was the one you missed?
Fucking Cormani.
Well,
Cormani, Cormani being a Buffalo. Honestly, I think retroactively, I should get credit.
Yeah.
I should get credit.
Yeah, you should be 100% now.
I am I'll give you
as a fighter, I am 9-0 with 1 no contest.
I like that.
Yeah, I like.
What do you think about Cormani in 25? That's an ugly number.
Yeah. Ben Hanks, 6'1", 170-pound cornerback, 4-star, son of linebacker Ben Hanks as well. Nashawn Montgomery, a wide receiver, Steve Wilfong put in a RPM pick for him. He's announcing in the not too distant future. And then Florida right now is sitting in the leader role for wide receiver Kobe Howard, 5'11", 190 pounds, ranked as the number 145th overall player on Rivals, but nobody else really has him ranked anywhere worth really mentioning, but from Chaminade Madonna down there in Davie. So Gators need some commitments. They need they seem to be in some fighting chances with some of these guys, but now it's just a matter of closing it down. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Colby Shelton's back, Nick. Baseball.
Yeah. So there was one. I gotta let some people don't feed the trolls. I've said this before.
Okay.
I've said this before in our show. Don't troll yourself. Don't feed the trolls. There's someone I posted hey, it wasn't really news. We knew Colby Shelton was coming back, but the kid's announcing it. Let the kid have his moment.
Yeah.
And then there's somebody, and people are going back and forth, and my mentions are popping off. And he's like, "Well, where was he gonna go? He was drafted in the 20th round." And it's signability. Once Colby Shelton, who was the 75th rated player in the draft, doesn't get drafted in the first 70 picks, once that signing bonus slot value drops under $1.5 million, probably his number is probably north of $2 million to sign because he's a sophomore but was draft eligible, has 2 more years. His signability becomes lower, and teams then aren't going to waste a draft pick. They'll throw a 20th out, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, Colby Shelton is going to make good NIL money to play at Florida next year. But yeah, the troll being where was he going to go? Colby Shelton was the 75th ranked player in the draft. And once the signability became low, he decided to come back to school. Huge for the Gators, though.
Yeah, huge for the Gators. Always loved people that couldn't make the JV team. Criticize somebody for getting drafted in the 20th round. That's all I never criticize. Yeah, no doubt. You played college ball. Couldn't hack it, but you played.
D3 sort of
You gave up. You still made it though. You lived somebody's dream.
Nobody dreams of playing D3, man.
How dare you? Somebody listen.
I went to JUCO, bro. Nobody dreams of playing JUCO football. It's prison.
The kids on my team, some of them dreamed and were super happy. I think that D3 baseball team was worse than all of the travel teams I played on in high school.
Yeah.
Got there and I was like, "What the hell are we doing? What the hell are we doing up here?"
We've got a comment. Smokey Gator, Brody Donay made the Cape League All-Star team.
Florida only has 3 catchers. So Brody Donay, Luke Heyman will be, I think, Florida's predominant catcher. He'll catch the most games. Brody Donay will DH. He can play first base, but they've got a bunch of options. They did really, really well in the transfer portal, and the draft played out really, really well for them. Probably the best the draft has played out for them in 6 years. Florida, Baseball America did their way too early top 25. Florida was ranked number 2. I'll start building my lies in the fall. I like to leave football press conferences and go right while watching baseball in the fall. But if the young pitchers start to round into the form, I think they will. Lies will be heavy.
Good
about the baseball team.
I didn't like when you were lying and you were wrong this season. I felt bad for you.
I did not build this team up this year. We're talking about 2 years ago with BT's last year with Sproat and Waldrop. That's when I started the I will not overhype the Bart Simpson. I will not overhype Florida. And I did not overhype them. And they were very good.
The number 3 team in the country, edging out FSU, who's number 4. All right, gentlemen, any final thoughts before we get out of here? Got a quick ad read, and then we'll close out the show.
Who's got song?
Good, man.
Corey has the song, but I'll be honest with you. I've not heard from Cam, the producer, in a little while. I don't know how to add the song. So, Corey, you can tell people where to go listen and what your song of the week is. I just don't know how to do all that stuff. So, hopefully, Cam, the producer's okay.
Super producer Cam, where you at, bro?
Cam, 5 years.
Spence, shout out to Chris Zen. Already gave him a shout out, but another shout out.
Yep.
Shout out, no free shout out.
Next week will be episode 300 for the boys of the flagship program. So we'll have to try to build a little guest list of some.
Yeah, I think we gotta get
my mod back.
You gotta get a mod back for 300.
Yeah. Corey,
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
idea.
I can make that happen. Just talked to the mod this weekend, man. Had a long conversation about Gator shenanigans and whatnot, man.
We'll think about it. We'll have an illustrious episode 300. Corey, you think about the song of the week.
Gotcha.
And then let me give a quick shout out to our friends over at Alumni Hall, alumnihall.com, or Alumni Hall on Archer Road, just past the Chick-fil-A on the left-hand side of the road. You will see Alumni Hall, the best places to get all of your Florida Gators accessory, apparel, tailgate supplies, accessories, Christmas and birthday gifts, whatever it might be, from toddler to great grandparent and anywhere in between. Go check out alumnihall.com. Let them know we sent you. We also will share a website. Sometimes we give out codes and that kind of stuff. So check out our social media feed for that. But alumnihall.com, best place in Gainesville and online to get a comprehensive selection of all Florida Gators memorabilia and apparel. alumnihall.com or Alumni Hall on Archer Road.
Man. What's the one dude that put on the Tennessee stuff this past week? Don't be him.
Oh, Josh.
Forgot his name. Probably for good reasons, right?
Josh Prey.
Yeah, Josh Prey. Don't be him, man. Love yourself. Have some honor. Respect yourself.
Yeah, and while you're respecting yourself, hit the like and subscribe button. Share this with your friends and family. It helps the algorithm when you guys do that. Appreciate all you guys that commented on here. Poor Palmer was getting trolled all up and down. Hopefully he wasn't reading the chat.
Okay, I'm gonna go some R&B, man. Lucky Day Lemonade.
Lucky Day Lemonade.
For sure. I'll see if I can help you out with that song, man. See if we can get that patched in.
Yeah. If you could tell me how to do that, that would be awesome.
For sure.
All right, gentlemen. We'll see you at the same corner, same time. Appreciate you guys joining us for the night episode. Looking forward to having this in the future. Same corner, same time next week.
Next week.